Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sportsballers podcast. I'm Corey Puffett, joined as always by Eric Meyer and Evan Ash. This is episode 121 on this Wednesday, December 9th, back on our regular schedule. Had some Tuesday football yesterday.
Yes, we did.
But, moving on to week 14, I guess. So we've got a lot to talk about today. Got some NFL discussion, some college football discussion. But before we get to that, a few off topics, starting with Major League Baseball. Last week we talked a little bit about the New York Yankees and specifically the Staten Island Yankees, no longer a part of their organization. And this week the Orioles have done a little bit of shuffling with their minor league setup. The Frederick Keys are no longer their single A affiliate. Instead, they'll be part of the MLB Draft League. So, Evan, what exactly is the MLB Draft League?
I have no idea.
I was hoping you would have researched that a little bit.
Yeah, no idea.
Interesting. So what does this mean for the Orioles as a whole? Just, first impressions.
I mean, it just means they have one less layer of minor leagues for guys to have to trickle through. A lot of guys who aren't really prospects, but warm bodies, so you can have enough people to play baseball. Those guys will get cut, and that's unfortunate for them. The MLB Draft League sounds kind of exciting, just the way it's phrased. But knowing Major League Baseball is going to be something really boring or something really expensive to watch. So, I'm just ready for the cold, dark winter that hasn't even started yet to be over.
I hear you on that. So we're all kind of looking forward to the Major League Baseball season. We still got some NFL action to get through before we get there. But once football is done, we'll kind of be counting down the days till baseball. NBA action isn't really that exciting during the regular season, so we're going to be in a little bit of a lull.
It's not,
so
Eric. It's not.
Strongly disagree. There's plenty of fun games to watch during the regular season.
On the whole, though, I mean, you might get a few good games each week, but
but also you have to ask yourself this though: how exciting is the regular season for Major League Baseball? I mean,
it's not. But
exactly. Yeah. So
fair point.
So that's exactly. So the only regular season that's really captivating to a great extent is football and college football. So NFL and college. That's probably it.
We are planning to try our hand at fantasy baseball again this year. It's been a while since we've done that. I'm starting the process of working on how it's going to set up, whether we're going to do some sort of a rotisserie offshoot or points based. And if points-based, what scoring system to use. It's definitely going to be head-to-head because that's the only way to play fantasy. If you're just doing, season-long points or season-long rotisserie, like what's really exciting about that on a week-to-week basis? What's to keep you coming back every day to check your lineup and see how you're doing? Definitely got to be head-to-head. But beyond that, still working out some details. But we'll talk about that on the show, I'm sure, as we get into that.
Just want to. Corey,
go ahead.
The fantasy baseball league that I did with my dad was rotisserie.
Was it rotisserie season long or rotisserie
head-to-head? Season long. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have anything inherently against rotisserie because I understand the purpose of that for fantasy baseball. I would never do that for football, but for baseball, I get it. But I want the head-to-head component for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want the head-to-head component as well. There's a lot of smack talk in that league.
I mean, you want to have some smack talk.
So, and then I looked up what the MLB Draft League is.
Oh, okay.
And they say it's will be the first league in the country focused on top prospects who are eligible to be drafted by MLB clubs that summer. The new format affirms MLB's commitment to the region and assures that MLB Draft League communities will continue to see future major leaguers each summer. So it sounds sort of like Cape Cod League. Mahoning Valley Scrappers, State College Spikes, I think that's the Trenton Thunder lineup. West Virginia Black Bears and Williamsport Crosscutters make up the MLB Draft League.
Interesting. All right. Well, we'll see what happens there. Moving on, just a little bit of NBA. Well, actually, I've got one additional thing to throw on here that wasn't on the show notes, but we'll start with this. The association has recently decided to allow head coaches to wear slightly more casual attire when coaching in game. No sweatpants or tracksuits or anything like that, but they can wear polos. But the thing that, which I'm fine with, I don't have a problem with NBA coaches not being required to wear a suit and tie or a sport coat while coaching. The thing that made me laugh when I was reading the story is that people are worried about the prospect of two head coaches with, shall we say, competing apparel on the sideline. Like it's the end of the world or something if you've got one coach wearing a polo and the opposing coach wearing a sport coat. Like,
oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know people paid hundreds of dollars to see what the coaches are wearing.
Where did the fashion police come from? This is basketball we're talking about here.
Yeah, this is nonsense. It doesn't matter. Unless the coach is naked on the sideline, then we can talk about what he's wearing and not wearing. But other than that, you're there to watch basketball.
Eric, thoughts?
The most noteworthy thing about whether or not the coach is wearing a sports jacket on the sideline is to determine whether or not he's going to get angry enough during the game to potentially throw it on the court. But beyond that, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me. It seems like this is a bit of perhaps a type of move because every time I saw a headline about this, it was directly connected to the fact that the coaches are going to have to wear a mask at all times when on the bench during the season. I feel like this is partially as a way to say, okay, we know that wearing masks are a slight inconvenience for you, so we'll throw you a bone and not make you wear a sports jacket. But, I mean, this is a non-story to me. I mean, who cares?
I just thought it was kind of interesting, and I wouldn't have thrown it on there if it wasn't for, like, the uproar and the fact that the NBA is actually, like, looking into what to do in those situations. Like they're actually looking at that and thinking, should we have some sort of requirement that they have to like agree on what they're going to wear for that game? They're actually talking about this thing. So that takes what should be a non-story and makes it into a bit of a story, as ridiculous as it is.
Yeah, this one needs to go away. The season starts in 2 weeks. Let's focus on
the
good.
Right. It does start in 2
weeks.
Not
the silly.
That's wild. Maybe we should start a fantasy basketball league in the interim.
I'm pretty sure I'd smoke you guys. But,
you probably would.
Because I am the only one that actually watched it. So.
Right. The other quick story that's coming out of the NBA has to do with James Harden. He opted out of attending the first several Rockets practices and instead working out on his own at the University of Houston. And then over the weekend, he attended a party in Atlanta for Lil Baby, not Da Baby, because the kids tell me those are two different rappers. And then he spent a few nights in Vegas, and he didn't wear a face mask at the birthday party or in the Vegas nightclubs, both of which violate the league's COVID-19 protocols. So he now has to test negative on 6 consecutive days before he'll be allowed to practice with the team. So that throws some things into question as far as his availability early in the season. I mean, there's still more than enough days for him to have those consecutive negative tests. But the fact that he was putting himself in that position, it increases the chance that he could have a positive test within that time frame. Not to mention the fact that we also know that it can take some time for it to develop in your system. Now, the test should detect it before you become symptomatic. So 6 days should be plenty of time to find out whether he has it or not. But it does throw a little bit of question into that for him.
I mean, I don't think James Harden's conducted himself in the most professional manner over the last few weeks. He clearly still is interested in potentially getting out of Houston.
Yeah.
And I think this might be part of that game. I mean, the fact that he just said, instead of showing up to practice with my teammates, I'm going to go hang out at the club and do things that normally you would say you probably shouldn't be doing that, get to work. But in the pandemic, it just makes it even more egregious to make that decision, especially when you've got a new head coach who's got a lot of pressure on him. Your team just traded for John Wall, so they acquiesced to you by getting rid of Westbrook, who you seem to not be able to play with, which is not a surprise because you don't seem to play well with anybody.
Even though it's a team sport.
Yes, so I think this is shameful behavior. I don't want to get into, will he or won't he be able to play come regular season time, because I don't think it matters that much. He clearly wants out. Eventually, I'm sure he'll get his way, but this was not the way to go about handling it. If he wants to become a Sixer so badly, he could just tell the front office, hey, maybe the Sixers, and then still show up and do your job like everybody else does in these situations.
It sounds like if you're dealing with a toddler and, they're screaming and throwing a tantrum rather than using their words, right? Like he's, I'm just going to go to Atlanta to the club and I'm going to Vegas. Like, no, talk to your bosses and tell them what the problem is.
Yeah. You would think that would be done, but sometimes we don't always handle things like adults.
Yeah.
Moving on to some hockey news. We don't necessarily talk a whole lot of hockey, but a couple things that caught my eye this week. One, just a really quick thing that was really interesting only for one reason, but the University of North Dakota's hockey team had a couple of players kneel during the national anthem this week. And again, like, this is normally a non-story for us. We don't care about players kneeling. In fact, we support players who want to kneel. But when you look at the picture, the entire team is white. So it was just really interesting to see a couple of white guys on an all-white team kneeling for the national anthem and talking to reporters after the game about why they felt called to do so, what the purpose behind it is. I think it's just important, as we continue to deal with social justice issues, it's when the only people who are fighting against it and are, bad-mouthing people who kneel are white people. It's nice to have some people who look like them on a team full of only people who look like them, who are willing to speak up and advocate for social justice change. The other bit of hockey news is that as the NHL looks to start up the season, I believe they're eyeing a start of around January 13th, if I remember the exact date correctly. Regardless, they're looking into the possibility of holding some outdoor games. Like the Bruins, I think, are looking into Fenway Park as a possible option, with the idea that they might be able to have fans in attendance if they're outdoors. With just everything that's going on right now, outdoor venues are a little bit safer than indoor venues. Granted, you still have to observe social distancing guidelines, wear a mask, and you can't have enormous crowds and still expect just being outside to magically solve everything.
I mean, you certainly won't have trouble getting people to wear a mask outside in Boston in January.
That's true.
I don't think that'll be a problem. I like this idea. That sounds fun,
Yeah,
get creative.
Outdoor hockey's been a thrill for the last decade for the NHL. They have the Winter Classic, and they have the Stadium Series that they do where they play at outdoor venues. And, when I was a younger lad, when I was 20, I misunderstood that. I didn't realize that they could actually find a way to play hockey outdoors in warm weather cities. Like, they had a game at Dodger Stadium, and I was like, seems a little suspect to have a hockey game outside when it's 65 degrees outside, but they made it work. The Winter Classic games are typically in colder weather cities like Pittsburgh and DC and Chicago and places like that. Usually they do it around New Year's, but they've proven that they can handle being able to play hockey outdoors in most climates. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend doing it in the dead heat of summer when it's 95 degrees outside. To get a little foggy on the ice there, but
water polo with them.
But they've had success doing it, and And I don't know the science behind it, but good for them, and hopefully they can make this work too.
Got some college hoops stuff to talk about before we get to the gridiron today. Starting with your Yellow Jackets, Evan.
Yes.
How did they beat Kentucky?
I have no idea. I didn't watch this game, but we crushed Kentucky. Like it wasn't close. And we lost to Georgia State and Mercer a week or two ago. But then we beat Kentucky. Like, this isn't Western Kentucky or Northern Kentucky or any other. This is Kentucky Wildcats. How do you lose to Georgia Tech? That's embarrassing for them. Calipari needs to be fired. Like, you can't lose to Georgia Tech. I'm sorry. That's not a good look. That's not what you want. Glad to get a nice win, because we don't win very often in men's basketball.
The ACC Big Ten Challenge is ongoing. Big Ten holds a 6-1 advantage as of this recording. But Maryland is 4-0 on the season. They're playing, I guess, at Clemson right now.
That 4-0 is going to turn to 4-1.
Yeah, that's going to turn to 4-1. Right now, Maryland is trailing by 23 with about a minute to go in the first half. So not looking good to stay unbeaten. And they're going to face a tough challenge on Saturday against number 14 ranked Rutgers. So we'll see what happens there.
Rutgers is good.
Good enough to be ranked number 14 right now. And Maryland has 4 ranked opponents in the next 32 days, including 2 top 10 opponents in early January. They play at home against number 3. I think they're both at home. Maybe one of them is away. But either way, they play against number 3 Iowa on January 7th, and then against number 6 Illinois on January 10th. So it's going to be a tough stretch for the next month for the Terps. And it doesn't get any easier if they take a loss today. One other bit of news that's really cool for all of us is Len Bias has been inducted into the NCAA Hall of Fame. Much deserved, long overdue. Probably the greatest, definitely the greatest Maryland basketball player ever. Quite possibly the best college basketball player ever. I think he's in that discussion. Eric is giving me a weird look. I think he's in that discussion. When you're talking about a guy who a lot of people thought could have been better than Michael Jordan, we can't say anything about what he would have done on the professional level because we don't know. But there's not a lot of guys who have played the game in college who have performed better than Len Bias did during his time at Maryland.
I mean, I'm not going to throw dirt on the career of Len Bias. He was obviously great as a Terp, and like you said, this is long overdue. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is the greatest college basketball player of all time, better known as Lou Alcindor at the time. He was a 3-time champion, and he would have been a 4-time champion, but back in those days, freshmen weren't allowed to play for the so-called varsity basketball teams in college. So instead, he took the freshman team and he dragged the varsity team with the freshmen. So he was obviously amazing at all levels. But no doubt, Len, certainly the most talented Terp of all time. You can get into debates on greatest. What does greatness mean? Because Juan Dixon won a title and all those things. So but Len Bias was clearly the cream of the crop as far as high-level talent. Obviously, his demise was very tragic. The story is well known in most parts, especially around here, but long overdue. Again, I think that some of the stigma behind of how he died was what held him out for so long, and I thought that was wrong then. It was wrong now, and I'm glad it was finally rectified.
Yeah, I think that we're finally starting to get past some of those stigmas, and I think just as a society, we're beginning to recognize a lot of drug problems as medical conditions, not necessarily just people not being able to control themselves, but as legitimate medical conditions that people need treatment for. And the last thing they need is just to be ostracized and that be that. Any thoughts from you, Evan?
I mean, not really. I don't really know a whole lot about lead bias. And, I don't have anything to say that you and Eric didn't already say. Uh, I think it is important as a society that we get past certain stigmas. Because it's not, that type of stuff isn't based in reality.
Moving on to some college football, Michigan at Ohio State. One of the most iconic games of every year has been canceled. It's the first time that they will not play since 1917. Ohio State was probably going to tie Michigan's record for the longest winning streak in the series history with what would have been 9 consecutive wins. Michigan did that back from 1901 to 1909. So it had been more than a century since either team had had a streak this long in the series. But Michigan
won 13 of the first 15 meetings.
Yes, they
and
did.
The two they didn't win were ties.
Yep, and that's a big part of why they still hold the all-time series lead, 58 to 51, with 6 ties between them, despite Ohio State clearly being the better team for the majority of the past couple decades.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on
120
that?
years is a long time to,
Yeah.
That's a long window. So, it's like I think the New England Patriots fairly recently finally flipped the head-to-head against the New York Jets. And,
against the Jets?
Yeah, and the Jets haven't exactly been a marquee franchise.
I thought you were going to say the Bills.
No, the Jets. Like it took them pretty much the entire duration of the Brady Belichick run to overtake the Jets in head-to-head because of how bad the Patriots were throughout the 60s, 70s,
yeah,
most of the 80s.
85 was really an aberration for them. It's not like they had, really good years leading up to or after that year.
Yeah, they very much had like a handful of good years in the mid 70s where they made an AFC Championship game. They lost to the Raiders, but pretty much other than that, it was just bottom feeders all day. Whereas the Jets were somewhat competitive for some periods of time, which was apparently enough to win a lot of games against the New England Patriots.
Yeah.
Oh wow, blew my mind. Okay.
Any other thoughts on that game being canceled, Evan?
I mean, it is kind of disappointing just because that game is called The Game. Like, so, when you call yourself the something, it's a pretty big deal. But Michigan was about to get absolutely annihilated. There's no evidence or sort of reasoning that's based in facts that Michigan was ducking Ohio State like Clemson claimed Florida State did a couple weeks ago. Like, Michigan has COVID issues, kind of a big deal nowadays, in case you hadn't noticed. So, football can wait, even if they've played, what's it been, 104 consecutive years or something.
To be fair, I'm calling myself the host today, and I don't think either of you would say that that's a really big deal.
I mean, but are you the host? Are you the best host of all hosts
I am
the
the
entire
host.
world?
I am the host.
Okay.
There's no consensus that claims you're the host, though. Like the game has. Like the game is, it's a big deal even when the teams or when one of the teams sucks, like Michigan does. Like it's still just, it's like anytime you play a rival. If you play a competitive rival, it's really exciting because the game has implications beyond the rivalry. If you play a rival that sucks at the time, you get to boat race them and feel really good about it. So there's positives all the time.
So the Big Ten has changed their mind about the rule that they instituted, saying that in order to play in the championship game for the conference, you had to play a minimum of 6 games. I guess they figured that the really good teams would take COVID restrictions a little bit more seriously, stay healthy, be able to play their games. And so maybe they just didn't want to run the risk of not as good teams playing fewer games, but still having to play a schedule that was advantageous to having a good winning percentage. But now that Ohio State won't play 6 games, they've reversed course, and Ohio State will face Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game on December 19th at noon on Fox. That game will be played from Lucas Oil Stadium. You guys were talking quite a bit in the chat, especially Evan, about this reversal by the Big Ten, so have at it.
I mean, this type of the Big Ten just suddenly changing their mind out of the blue is not unprecedented.
No, it's not.
We've seen this before. So, the instituting this rule seems like why would you do this? You're setting yourself up for what they had to do today, which is to get rid of the rule. Ohio State's issue was they kept having to cancel games because their opponents had COVID issues, right? Like you need both teams cleared to play. So, and then there was no wiggle room. You can't really postpone much further or any further than they did. So, they just weren't able to get enough games in. That's unfortunate, but they really should have seen this coming, frankly. Like what else was going to happen, right? Like what were they thinking back in August?
Yeah, I mean we've said for months, like dating back to June, that this was only going to get worse in the fall and the winter time when it gets colder. And sure enough, here we are, and it's way worse than it ever has been. And I think they put the rule in place more so just to give the season some semblance of structure, so that you don't have a team that won 2 games representing the Big Ten or something like that. I don't think it has anything to do with trying to weed out some of the teams that don't prioritize COVID as much, because, I mean, nobody's going to be able to completely. These are college kids. And like Evan said, it takes 2 to tango here. You can do all you can to stay healthy, but if your opponent does the wrong things and they have to cancel the game, then to no fault of your own, you're left not being able to compete. So I think that ultimately they got to the right place. It was just hilariously stupid that it took it this far to get there, because there's no way in hell you can justify not letting Ohio State potentially compete for a college football playoff championship. And what rationale would you have? Like, you're putting that committee in position to leave them out because of something you did that has nothing to do with them. Like, it's not Ohio State's fault that the Big Ten made a stupid rule. And so then the Big Ten would be like, oh, why can't you guys compete for the titles? Like, because you guys screwed it up for us. So this had to be rectified. You couldn't sit there and deny a very deserved Ohio State team their opportunity to compete for a national championship. I mean, this is definitely one of the 4 best teams in the country at this point. And until proven otherwise, they deserve their shot just as much as anybody else.
Yep. Some college football action coming your way this weekend. Notable games include number 9 Georgia against number 25 Missouri on Saturday at noon on SEC Network. We've got the number 17 Tar Heels playing at number 10 Miami at 3:30 on ABC. Tomorrow we've got some Thursday football in addition to the return of Thursday night football in the National Football League, as Evans Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets host the Pittsburgh Panthers at 7 o'clock. You can catch that game on ESPN3. So thoughts on those games?
That is. I mean,
ESPN3 you have to stream.
Yeah. It's out in the ether somewhere. I mean, I'm not super excited about any of this stuff. I'm mainly looking forward to next Saturday, the conference championship games. Those are looking pretty good.
Well, you'll get a chance to either trash talk Will or be trash talked by Will in the Fantasy Football League chat tomorrow.
Well, we're toast, so there's that.
So I guess we know who will be trash talking who.
Yeah.
Moving on to the National Football League, starting with our takeaways from Week 13. The football team ended the Pittsburgh Steelers' undefeated bid. Who had that?
Not me.
I certainly didn't.
Didn't I have 16 points on the Steelers? I think I did.
That was ill-advised, and we told you so.
Yeah, I certainly was not expecting Washington to win that game, but I also saw the issues that the Steelers had been having, and I knew that there was a good chance the game would be close. And anytime you have close football games, you have a chance for any one play to really make the difference. In this case, the Steelers had 7 plays, drops by their receivers, the most drops that they've had in a game under Mike Tomlin, the most drops they've had in a game, I think, since like 1985. if I'm remembering the year correctly. It was a terrible game for the receivers. And Mike Tomlin let them know in the post-game press conference he is not held back on criticizing his team of late. He's likened them to a JV team, and this week he said, if you can't catch the ball, then we'll find some people who can. Kind of important to, it's one thing to get the ball to the receiver, but you got to actually catch it once it gets to you. So, I mean, that was a crazy game. Washington was down 14-0. I think that ties the biggest deficit overcome by a road team at Heinz Field. And Alex Smith, after having kind of a rough first half, made some really bad choices on third downs in terms of throwing the ball way short of the sticks, not giving his team much chance to convert some of those third down tries. He managed the game much better in the second half and played well. And J.D. McKissick had a couple nice series. Cam Sims, he had a game. That was a great game for Cam Sims. Logan Thomas showed out and played well. And the defensive line was getting after Ben Roethlisberger all game. Didn't give the Steelers any room to run the ball. That was an exciting game. That was one of the more exciting games I've seen from Washington in a long time.
Yeah, I didn't see the game because it wasn't on TV here for some reason. I don't understand. What else do you have to air at that time? Fox, the local news? Is that so important? Just type that up on the side somewhere. Have a little ticker at the bottom.
Now you need that rerun of Judge Judy at 4:30. That's what
exactly. Judge Judy, she retired. They don't make that show anymore.
No, she moved to a streaming service. She's moving to a streaming service.
Oh, I thought she quit. She's making $1 bajillion.
She's like rebranding and doing it on a streaming service soon.
I don't understand how somebody who's as old as Judge Judy is and how much money she's made, why even bother? Just once you lose your main gig, just call it quits and enjoy life.
How many judges get to trash talk the people who are like the defense and not the prosecutor but the
plaintiff?
Yeah, the plaintiff. Who gets to do that? Judge Judy gets to do that.
If they want to.
She probably just does it for her own entertainment. The fact that we're entertained by it too is just gravy.
Oh, it's great. I love Judge Judy.
I do too.
I'd probably rather watch a live action football game.
I would too.
But yeah, that's just me. But yeah, this is pretty cool. Nice little win for the team. Probably the most exciting win that Washington's had. I don't know, probably since 2015. When we made a playoff run with Kirk Cousins. So, I mean, it's been a while since, a high-profile win has gone the way of Washington. I mean, I don't count Thanksgiving because the Cowboys are a joke, so that's another story. We'll talk about them in a little bit when we discuss the Ravens. But I worry about the Steelers a little bit, though, because, I mean, I realize that Washington's defense is very good, and I think that's been established at this point, that the team has a very solid defense that can slow down even the best offenses in the league at a time. And the Steelers aren't that because the Steelers cannot run the ball to save their lives right now. Their run game has been abysmal. They're relying on Ben Roethlisberger, who's pushing 40 to throw the ball 50 times a game. And frankly, I realize that he's had a pretty nice year, but, he's not in his prime anymore. And that's a lot to ask of somebody at that age with that injury history to be able to sustain a level of success throwing the ball and dropping back 50, 55 times a game. That just doesn't seem like a recipe for success, especially in a game where, your opponent only scored 23 points. So it's not like you were in a shootout. You could have been able to move the ball if you could run the ball a little bit, and they can't do that. And, they've got some injuries that are starting to pile up on their defense, which is making their defense still very good, but a little bit beatable. And if their defense is going to have some vulnerability show up, then their offense is going to have to make up for it. And right now, I'm just not seeing it happening for them.
Yeah, the Steelers, I mean, they basically ran away with the AFC North. I think they could have clinched if they won. on Monday afternoon. But I'm looking at their schedule now. Like it's a whole lot tougher looking now than it looked a few weeks ago. They got Bills, Bengals, Colts, Browns. Only the Colts game is at home. The Bills are going to be a tough team. The Colts are in the playoffs, and the Browns. These aren't your older brothers Browns, I guess. Right, but they can play a little ball themselves. So they need to iron out their issues. Unless they could be in danger of peaking too early. And Kansas City is also 11-1. So if the Steelers lose another game and the Chiefs win out, then the Steelers will be playing on Wild Card Weekend with the expanded playoffs.
Your Ravens won their game last night against the Dallas Cowboys at home. Lamar Jackson returned from the COVID list. Had an okay game. He ran the ball pretty well, but throwing the ball was a bit of a struggle for him. He short-armed a lot of balls, a lot of passes sailed on him. Throwing sidearm when he didn't need to was a bit of an issue. But they got the job done, and the ground game was really the catalyst for your Ravens yesterday. J.K. Dobbins just could not be stopped. Gus Edwards broke loose for a couple of long runs. Mark Ingram had a couple of really nice runs mixed in. What did you think of that game,
Lamar
Evan?
himself as well.
Yep.
Oh, geez. I just got a call from 404894, which means Georgia Tech asking for money. So go ahead and decline.
So what did you think of the game yesterday?
I got a little frustrated. The defense seemed to, just allow people to march right down the field. Couldn't really pressure Andy Dalton consistently. But Andy Dalton's made himself a really, really good career of just terrorizing the Ravens for the most part. So, I expected him to play well. He wasn't going to look like a complete bum. The running game was just dominant. Dallas's defense, Troy Aikman was just lighting up the Dallas defense in the broadcast. He was not sugarcoating it whatsoever. It's like, these guys, they just stink. Just get them off the field. They're getting run over. It's about their pride and their manhood and all this kind of stuff. Like, oh my God. Just so, Dallas isn't really the type of team that you can measure your team against. So, you have to beat them bad. And the Ravens sort of did that. The real test will be this coming Monday night against Cleveland. So we've had the past 3 weeks, we had a game that was supposed to be on Thursday, moved to Wednesday. Then we played on Tuesday, and now our next game is on Monday.
Yeah, so you're slowly moving back where you played Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday, then you'll play Sunday. You'll be back on the same schedule as the rest of us.
I bet if we make the playoffs, we'll be playing on Saturday. That's going to happen.
The New York Jets fired Greg Williams after whatever the hell that was at the end of the Raiders game on Sunday. The Jets had the game in the bag. They were finally going to win one. And Greg Williams decides to run a zero coverage, all-out blitz against Derek Carr, and Henry Ruggs got past the defense for a long touchdown catch with like 3 or 4 seconds left on the clock to win the game for the Raiders. So, Greg Williams, you're gone.
You go. Yeah, this was just egregious defense. Like, what are you doing? You got to know the situation, right? You have to guard the goal line. You're up by 4 with like 10 seconds to play. You know where they're going to try to throw the ball to. You just need to keep the Raiders from crossing the goal line. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get a sack. You don't have to prevent them from getting a first down necessarily. So it was so bad. Like how that's the call in that situation. You have to be doing that on purpose. What are you thinking?
And I think it's interesting to note on Greg Williams specifically, what this says about the hiring process for coaches in the NFL. The fact that he even got this job, I saw some statistics that said, I believe it was that in the past 6 or 7, it was the past 7 years that he has coached a defense in the NFL, either 5 or 6 of them have ranked in the bottom 4 of the league in terms of yards allowed in a season. So his defenses have not performed well of late in his career, and yet he got this job anyway, and he continues to find work in the NFL.
I was watching a YouTube video, and the guy described Greg Williams as he's never seen a problem that couldn't be solved by blitzing more. So, yeah.
That's pretty much Greg Williams.
Yeah, like what are you doing? Oh my God! And this screwed the Ravens, of course, because we're trying to catch the Raiders.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. This felt like when you're playing fantasy football, and the guy that you need to lose faces the guy that plays 2 guys that are on bye weeks, and it just screws you out of an opportunity to move up. Like this was a free win. The Raiders didn't earn this. They didn't deserve to win this game. They were handed this game by an incompetent fake NFL team. I mean, that's the type of play that if it existed, you would be relegated for. I mean, you just straight up send you somewhere else to play football for the next few years until you can figure it out. Because that was embarrassing. I mean, and the thing is, what really pissed me off is every time something stupid like this happens, you get a bunch of nerds that come out on the internet, like the Pro Football Focus guys, that say, it was actually the right call.
No,
Are you high?
What?
Are you high? What? There's in no world.
I'll have what they're having.
Exactly. And the thing that was crazy about this is just 30 seconds prior to this game-winning touchdown, the previous play, Nelson Aguilar was running wide open down the field, and Derek Carr overthrew him for what would have been the game-winning touchdown on that play. And we saw it on the red zone, and we were all like, oh, wow, the Jets almost screwed that up. And then literally the next play, they cut back to it. It's like, oh, we're doing this again. And this time they caught it. I was like, they're saying, well, statistically, blitzes are most effective in that situation. They limit the success rate. I'm like, dude, they have 45 yards to go. The only successful play is in the end zone. The situation does not call for your standard successful versus failure play. Right. It's not about picking up 5 yards or 10 yards. It's about scoring a touchdown. Like, I don't give a damn what the hell your so-called successful play is for Football Outsiders, for PFF, or whatever. With 13 seconds left and no timeouts for the other team, all you have to do is tackle the guy in bounds once, and the game's over.
Yeah, that's the problem here, because as Derek Carr, his only read is the deep ball, right? He's not when you're blitzing. The idea is that you're trying to get some pressure on the quarterback as he's going through his progressions. There's no progression on that play. His target is Henry Ruggs, right? It's either him or maybe they've got somebody running a flat route on the other side of the field as well. But as soon as he sees the man-to-man coverage on Ruggs, he's a burner. He knows where he's going with the ball. He's gonna throw it out there to Ruggs and hope that he can run under it. So when you blitz, you're leaving your secondary high and dry. This isn't a situation where there's any possibility that all of the Raiders receivers are going to be running crossing routes underneath, and your defenders can catch up to them once they make the catch. You're not in that situation. So,
no, not at all. And these people that sit there and say, oh, well, you would have been calling him a genius if it works. I'm like, no, I don't call anybody a genius for preventing a touchdown from the 45-yard line with 13 seconds left. You're supposed to do that.
Right. We would have said that was a risk. He got away with it.
Patricia would have called himself a genius.
Yes. That's the thing. It's like, yeah, they would have looked at it and said, oh, wow, they blitzed there? That was kind of silly. But, we wouldn't have cared because the result would have been the appropriate result, which is the Jets win the game. Yep. In this case, the Jets didn't win the game for one reason and one reason alone. They made this call. Like, that's the only reason why the Raiders won this football game, was because Greg Williams called that defense. If he calls a normal prevent type defense where he has people guarding the goal line, unless something crazy happens, the Raiders do not score a touchdown and they lose the game. So, I mean, this is the type of thing where if he didn't do it on purpose to preserve the tank or to spite Adam Gase, the fact that we can talk about it and think that maybe that was a possibility tells you that by itself means you should get fired. Because we are legitimately looking at you like you couldn't have actually thought that was going to work, right?
Right.
One thing I'm reminded of, something Nick Saban said, maybe it was in a podcast or in an interview or something, but he was like, in critical situations, you think about players and not plays. So like the matchup in that situation, if you're Greg Williams and you're going to blitz the house, you're going to blitz everybody, including fireman Ed, he blitzed on the play. Like, you got to think, oh, well, I'm leaving my corner one-on-one on the outside. So the cornerback, I think his name was Lamar Jackson. Yeah, just not that Lamar Jackson.
Not as fast.
Yeah, clearly. He was an undrafted rookie, matched up one-on-one with no safety help or anything against Henry Ruggs III, who was a first-round draft pick and was just ridiculously fast. So, just thinking of those two players alone, you got to be like, oh, well, this isn't an advantageous matchup for me if I'm the Jets. So, like, what are you doing? That was dumb.
Henry Ruggs has straight line speed that rivals that of Tyreek Hill. And you left an undrafted rookie in one-on-one with him when the only situation where he can have a successful play is if he beats you over the top for a touchdown. It's just how do you justify that? And by the way, this lets Vic Fangio, off the hook for the second dumbest decision when he decided that he was going to punt from midfield on 4th and 3 while trailing to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes with 6 minutes left under the guise of we'll get the ball back.
Wait, that was the thing that happened? I think I might have.
Yes, that happened, and I was furious. I bitched about it on the chat. It was just I was just so upset with that. I was like, you know what? You're proving my point that you are the Butch Jones of the NFL when you do stuff like that.
That's, I mean, Brian Billick. Bring up another coach. When you go into the lion's den, you don't tippy toe in. So, like, if you're playing the Chiefs in Kansas City, you got to go after them, right? You can't be passive. You can't punt on 4th down all the time.
Certainly not then.
So, like, if it's, like you said, 4th and 3 from the 50 with 6 minutes left, you got to try to take the game, like what the Raiders did when they beat the Chiefs. They took the game from them.
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Wow.
Carson Wentz was benched this weekend for the Philadelphia Eagles in favor of Jalen Hurts, and it looks like Hurts is going to be the quarterback going forward, at least for the time being, because Wentz has been awful this year. And it's nice that the Eagles finally admitted it, and now all these people who are Wentz defenders can just go somewhere else. I'm sure they're still going to defend him, but Wentz has been unforgivably bad this year.
Yeah, I mean this saves him the ignominy of potentially being the worst quarterback rated by DYAR in NFL history, or at least dating back to 1985. He was on pace to catch Josh Rosen's 2018 season, and again, we talked about this. That's the type of performance you expect maybe from a rookie because they're probably going to a bad team and we don't know how good they are. This is a 5th-year player who's being paid like a franchise quarterback, and he's just out there laying egg after egg every week to the point where you can count on it. Like, it's not like every once in a while he flashes his potential, like sort of like Baker Mayfield last year where he was bad, but you sometimes saw, the flashes of what we were impressed with him as a rookie by and what we saw in college. That doesn't exist for Wentz anymore. He is in his own head to such a degree that he's lost the ability to play the position. His footwork is terrible, and it's always been a weakness of his. His mechanics have been questionable. His reads have been a little bit questionable in the past. He stares receivers down. But he got away with it because he had some moxie and a lot of athleticism. Now, he still has athleticism. He's still a good athlete, but the moxie's gone. The confidence is shot. Like, he doesn't trust himself. He holds onto the ball because he doesn't know if he should throw it away. And it's just like, dude, you might need to go see the sports psychologist because there's issues that are, between the ears with him at this point. It's not physical because, like I said, he can still throw the ball really far and he can still run a little bit and and escape pressure, but the decision making is abysmal.
90% of the game is half mental. So
Thank you. Yep.
like oh my goodness. The worst part about this is the time for showing flashes of potential and stuff, those days are long gone with Carson Wentz. Like he's in his fourth year? Fifth year. Fifth year. Like, you either got to get it done or get out of here at this point. But the thing is, though, the Eagles, they can't get rid of him. If they get rid of him next year, it'll be, I think, $59 million of dead cap. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You can't win with $59 million of dead cap, especially when the cap is going down next year, thanks to coronavirus. So the Eagles are stuck with Carson Wentz. They signed up for this. So they have to fix him or not fix him and just have him keep slinging picks and sacking himself.
Yeah, I am curious to see how Jalen Hurts is going to play against the Saints. I mean, that's obviously a brutal matchup in your first career start to go against a defense that's playing really good football right now and has really kind of hit a stride even without Drew Brees. Again, just like last year, it doesn't seem like that's a high win scenario. I'm a little disappointed as a Saints guy that they have to play the unknown instead of the known terrible quantity that is Carson Wentz. So it makes the chance of victory ever so slightly lower than it probably was, but nevertheless, I am curious to see what Hurts can do because he's such an intriguing college player because sometimes he looked amazing. He looked great at Oklahoma, and then other times he's getting benched in the national championship game, and the other guy comes in behind him and wins the game. So, and then another situation, the guy that he got benched for gets hurt and he replaces him and he goes and he wins the game that guy was losing. So he's such an interesting player because he's a really good athlete and he's at times shown the ability to throw the ball. He had a nice-ish stretch against the Packers, although I think a few people are giving him a little too much credit for that because they're like, oh, he got him back in the game. Well, one of those touchdowns was a special teams score. So, they didn't really get back in the game because of Jalen Hurts. He had one really good throw, and that was kind of it.
Both of those sort of benchings are coming in for injury. Both those games were against UGA. It was amazing.
Yes, it was. I thought about you both times because you went to bed on one. I don't know if you saw the other one.
I was watching the other one. Of course I went to bed on one. I was beside myself. I can't take this anymore. It was just a coronation of slurpage, and I'm like, I'm done. I'm out.
So what that tells me is that Tua Tagovailoa should be like your favorite quarterback that doesn't play for your team.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, because he saved you from watching UGA win a title.
Mm-hmm. Their first since 1980.
Yeah.
This past week, the NFL reported their fewest positive COVID tests since October, but that doesn't mean that we were without any positive tests at all. Des Bryant, he tested positive just before game time yesterday, showed up to the stadium, had an inconclusive test that he didn't actually know about initially until they came down, got him off the field during warm-ups, told him he had to take another test, and that one came back positive. He seemed pretty distraught afterwards, tweeted something that implied that he was giving up on playing this season. He later took that down and seems to have, kind of calmed down a little bit. It tends to happen sometimes. Something like that happens, you get upset, and first thing that comes to mind is, man, like I can't take this anymore right now. But you let it simmer a little bit. You think about it. It's why you should never tweet when you're upset, or at least not immediately after you find something out. Give yourself a chance to digest it and think about it a little bit. But he, at least currently, has tested positive. We also had some issues with the Carolina Panthers as they had to place 8 of their players on the reserve COVID list, including wide receivers DJ Moore and Curtis Samuel. Moore tested positive. Curtis Samuel was listed as a close contact. And apparently the contact tracing has traced the outbreak back to a gathering of players outside the team facility during Carolina's bye week, which was last week. So
I believe that is against the protocol, is it not?
yeah, so that is against the protocol. Right now, we're looking at a possibility of some fines and or loss of draft picks for the organization. You look back at the Raiders; they were fined $500,000 as an organization. John Gruden was fined $150,000 individually, and the team lost its 6th-round draft pick for violating COVID-19 protocols back in early November. Now, those fines and losses were because the Raiders were a repeat offender. This is Carolina's first potential protocol violation regarding COVID-19. But it'll be interesting to see what the league decides to do about this. It is their first violation, but we've seen enough other teams deal with these issues that you would think that the rest of the league would, hopefully learn from other teams' mistakes instead of waiting to make their own.
Oh yeah. I mean, you can't violate the COVID-19 protocol. This is a big deal. And like what Corey just said about the Raiders, violating the protocol gets expensive. I mean, that's not my money, but still, it's a lot of money. So just follow the rules, please. It's not hard, right? I don't make the rules, and I don't break the rules. Just follow the rules.
Carolina plays Minnesota, they're coming off a game against Minnesota a couple weeks ago. I forget who they're playing this week off the top of my head. They're playing Denver, so should be a fairly easy win for them, but maybe not so much if they're losing a lot of players.
People, I'm sure.
One other bit of news from the past week from the NFL relates to PEDs, which we don't really see a whole lot of in the NFL lately, but we had 2 for sure, possibly a 3rd suspension on the horizon for performance-enhancing drugs. Will Fuller and Brandon Roby of the Houston Texans were both suspended for testing positive for banned substances. And now A.J. Boye is likely going to be next to be hit with a suspension after they found a banned substance in his system. I haven't seen anything about what Fuller has said, but Roby talked about, I guess he was taking some sort of a medication during the offseason that according to him, his doctor assured him that there were no substances in it that were on the NFL's restricted substance list, and that ended up not being true. Roby's not appealing it. He took responsibility. He said that it is my responsibility to know. I shouldn't have trusted my doctor in this instance. Which is tough. Like, we should always be able to trust our doctors, but as a professional athlete who knows that there are certain substances that you cannot have in your system or you cannot play, you do need to take a little bit more ownership over checking these things and making sure that you check every single substance that is in whatever medicine you're taking against the banned substances list. Any thoughts on that?
Don't do PEDs. I think you summed it up pretty nicely, Corey. We got mailbag questions though, right?
Yes. So we're going to get to our mailbag questions, but first, last quick look back on Week 13, the best and worst per Football Outsiders. The best quarterback of the week was Josh Allen. Justin Herbert was the worst quarterback of the week.
Was he ever?
Just had an abysmal performance against the Patriots, but then again, the entire Chargers team had an abysmal performance. It doesn't all fall on Justin Herbert's back.
It falls on Anthony Lynn.
I went back and watched that game today, primarily because I was trying to figure out who I was going to pick between the Patriots and the Rams this week, and just thinking about, and so I watched the game and Justin Herbert, honestly, to me, didn't play that horribly, but he did have a couple of bad picks. One in particular was just absolutely, it was just a total rookie move on his part to try and throw back across the field as he was rolling out to his right. And he had Keenan Allen open. It wouldn't have been a long gain. The defender would have gotten there right as the ball got to Allen, but Allen is a great receiver who can shield the ball from any defender if you just give him a chance. He had that out, and instead he tried to throw it back across the field in the middle of the field and threw a pick. That was Herbert's worst play of the game. Everything else was, that he did really horribly came, when they were already down by an insurmountable deficit.
I just feel like Belichick just coached circles around Anthony Lynn.
Absolutely. The Patriots defense looked phenomenal in that game. They were everywhere.
Mm-hmm, right. That speaks to how good a coach Belichick is, or how bad a coach Anthony Lynn is. Like, their special teams was a mess.
Well, their special teams has been a mess all year. Disaster. I don't know how we haven't heard about their special teams coordinator getting fired by now. Best running back of the week was Aaron Jones. Worst was Phillip Lindsay. That's both by total and by rushing DYAR. And at the receiver position, Corey Davis was the best of the week. He was sitting on Eric's bench. And the worst of the week, I'm going to put this picture up here for you guys. Nelson Aguilar.
I put that picture in, so...
Yeah, I was kind of interested. I thought about briefly trying to put a picture in, but I didn't have time as I was plugging that in last night. Was that last night? Yeah. Somebody took care of it.
Well, yes, Evan put the picture in. I put it up on our actual feed.
Oh, no, I understand. I got you. Yeah. I'm just saying that I didn't do either of those things, but I thought about one of them. So there's that. But I mean, Corey, you can't really give me too much gas for not starting Corey Davis because, I mean, he's been wildly inconsistent his whole career.
Oh yeah, this was a wild week for wide receivers. If you read my write up, we had 7 of the top 11 receivers in our league were either on benches or were on waivers this weekend. So there were a lot of players who are not considered every week starts who just went off this week. Can't necessarily expect that every week. No. Before we get to our picks for the week, we do have some mailbag. Eric alluded to that earlier, so let's get to those questions. We'll start with Andrew, even though he was late getting his in, sent them to us after we'd already started. Thanks for just making me distract myself by looking for your question.
A question? It's a paragraph.
It is a paragraph, and he could have just typed it into our comments on the video because I'm paying attention to that at least.
Well, he's at work, and we're doing a little bit of the LIFO style for inventory, last in, first out. So
regardless,
should be happy, Drew. We're getting to you
Drew's
first.
too busy saving lives and stuff.
Yeah, he's busy being a productive member of society while we yap about sports. So. Props to him for even getting us a question, given the fact that he had to go to work and deal with the environment that he's dealing with at work, given these difficult times. So
love our healthcare
we appreciate any questions we get.
Yes. So Andrew says the Patriots seem like a team that could beat anybody, but could also lose to anybody. They have a tough matchup against the Rams this week, but the rest of the schedule seems like winnable games. Do y'all think that they could eke their way into the playoffs this year?
I'm going to take issue with the statement that they could beat anybody because I don't think they could beat, anybody. I think they would lose to some of the very best teams in the league pretty convincingly, but I understand they are definitely overachieving. They're playing at a level that their talent and their production honestly dictates that they shouldn't. They're winning games despite the fact that they've still got one of the worst defenses in the league by DVOA. They don't have a whole lot of offensive skill positions to write home about. Cam Newton is not an effective thrower of the football anymore, and yet they're 6-6. So you got to give them credit for that. But I just think that the AFC is so tough this year, and there's a lot of teams in the mix for the wild card, and they basically have to win out to have a really good chance to have any real chance. Because 9-7 is not going to cut it this year, even with the extra wild card. And it would be pretty hard to believe if they won the rest of their games, especially with a date with the Rams and the Rams are a good team too. So I don't see them getting in, but I give them credit for clawing back into the season when we wrote them off back in October.
Yeah,
they
that's
got the Rams tomorrow. They got at the Dolphins next week, where they've historically struggled.
yeah. I mean, just
even when they have a really good team.
today is the anniversary of the only double lateral to score a touchdown on the final play of a game in NFL history.
Yeah.
Okay.
That happened.
Then they get the Bills after that, and then the Jets. So, they could. I mean, it's realistic. They could only win one of these games.
Yeah, I mean that's certainly possible. But even if they were to win, 3 of their last 4, as Eric said, we already have 7 AFC teams at 8 wins, and those are all teams that I would expect to win at least one more game. So so now you're talking about, not to mention the Ravens and the Raiders, who going 2-2 over the final 4 games would also get to 9 wins. So,
but that's an interesting wrinkle though, because the Patriots would have the tiebreak over both the Ravens and the Raiders because they beat them during the regular season.
Right, but you'd also have the Colts, the Dolphins, and the Titans, and I'm not sure where exactly they stand. And again, that's best case scenario. That's assuming those teams only win one more game. It's possible that all 3 of them could win 2 of their last 4 at least. I mean, you talk about they already have a 67% winning percentage. They're all 8-4. So the chances of them having a losing record over the final stretch is unlikely. It's not 0, but it's unlikely, and that could be what the Patriots need, because it's gonna be tough for them to win out. Not impossible, but it's gonna be tough.
That Greg Williams tank job really wreaked havoc for a lot of these playoff teams in the mix, like the Ravens and like the Patriots, because like I said, the Raiders were floundering. I mean, they got blown out by the Falcons a week and a half ago, and they should have lost this game to the soon-to-be 0-16 Jets. So, I mean, that's not exactly awe-inspiring, but they got the win, and that keeps them at a pace to potentially get in, which at this point I would say the Raiders probably don't deserve to get in because they should be 6-6.
Yep. Let's look at Sean's mailbag. We'll start with Baltimore. Let's start with the Jets, because he asked kind of a humorous question about this, and we just talked about them. So he asks, what is more likely to happen this season? The Jets going 0-16 or Josh Gordon getting suspended again? I don't know why he has to be mean to Josh Gordon. That just seems uncalled for.
Yeah, it's a little, the guy's been suspended 100 times. I mean,
I feel bad for him. I like Josh Gordon. I'm rooting for him. I really am. I've been rooting for him. I continue to root for him. He's there are some guys who you can just see, like, they don't have a desire to get their life together. Josh Gordon is not that guy.
Oh yeah.
He is a guy who I want success for him, whatever that means, whether that's on the field, whether that's in life. I just want success for him. So I hope that he can stay clean, that he has the support system around him that he needs right now. And I also hope that he does find some success on the field, because boy, he was one of the most exciting players in football when he was active early in his career.
Oh yeah, I think it was his rookie year. He was lighting it up.
He was on Mike Washington's team in our inaugural season of our fantasy league, and he had those 2 straight games where he had like 200 some yards. I think he was the first receiver ever to have 2 straight games like that.
Oh yeah, you can lock it in. Jets 0-16 at Seahawks, at Rams, versus Browns, at Patriots.
Yeah, I don't think they're getting.
Yeah, there's no wins on the schedule there.
I don't think so.
And if the question is, like, you have to put a little bit of timeline on it too. I mean, again, I'm a Josh Gordon guy too, and obviously I don't want to see him deal with the disciplinary office from the National Football League anymore. But what does get suspended mean? Like this year, like next year, like ever again? Who knows? But hope it doesn't happen. The NFL seems to be moving in a more tolerant direction for drug use, specifically marijuana. But we also know that Josh Gordon's issues go beyond recreational use of marijuana. So hopefully those demons have been exercised. But I find it I kind of find it reassuring though that despite the fact that he's had so many issues, the NFL still reinstates him, and they have to do that. It's not like there's a schedule that says you're allowed to come back now. They have to evaluate him and make that determination. Now, again, it's happened before, and it's ended up not going so well, but I don't see any reason to root for it to happen again.
Yeah.
I want to see Josh Gordon have. I want to see him have success like you guys do. Obviously, the extent of that for an NFL career is probably going to be limited now because he's lost so much time. But you want to see the guy find himself and be happy. And if that involves playing football, great. If it doesn't, great. But you just want to see him move away from whatever's haunting him and causing him to continue to go back to whatever drugs or issues that he has.
Agreed. The other questions from Sean. We'll start with Washington. Yes, does Washington's win from Sunday put Alex Smith as the front runner for comeback player of the year? My answer would be no, but it does actually insert him into the conversation. I think we all kind of talked about him as comeback player of the year earlier in the season, but a lot of that is simply because of how extraordinarily severe that injury was that he suffered 2 years ago. You still have to not just play, but play well. And Alex Smith had not necessarily played horribly, but he also hadn't had any really good games this season. This was the
game against the Lions.
What's that?
Didn't he have a good game against the Lions?
He had a pretty decent game against the Lions. He threw for a lot of yards, but his DYAR from that game I don't believe was all that great. Regardless, this is the kind of defining win that I think definitely puts him in the conversation. But you've still got Ben Roethlisberger, and I get that the Steelers are no longer undefeated, but they're still 11-1. They're still a great football team. He's still had an extraordinary season coming off of an injury that took away his entire 2019. This is a guy who, during the little bit of action you saw last year, and then dating back to 2018. I thought that he was pretty much washed. I mean, he was overthrowing everybody he targeted in the red zone. He was overthrowing people all over the field. And this year, he's throwing accurate passes. He's getting the ball out faster than anybody. He has redefined himself in a way to allow himself to have success in the NFL at his advanced age, coming off of a really bad thumb injury on his throwing hand. That is, I think, still definitely has him as far and away the front runner for comeback player of the year as of right now.
Corey, I'm going to very strongly disagree. Ben Roethlisberger certainly deserves consideration for comeback player of the year, but I would have given Alex Smith comeback player of the year if he just got himself to a point where he could suit up and just take a kneel down at the end of a game. His injury was so severe, he almost died, he almost lost his leg. So the fact that he's come back to not only play football, but, play at a decent level, this should be the Alex Smith comeback player of the year award at this point.
The thing is, I would hold the same. I would make the same argument if we were talking about Ryan Shazier coming back into the NFL, and we know how horrible his injury was. We all feel for him. If he had, if he was able to and wanted to play football again, I would be just absolutely beside myself on why he would risk that, but also just like Alex Smith, really excited for him to get the opportunity while also being terrified every single time that he tries to make a tackle. But if he is a role player off the bench, he's not really making that much of an impact, and you've got somebody else who is coming off of an injury where he missed almost an entire year or the entire year and is having, an all-pro level season, which I'm not saying that Ben Roethlisberger has been the best quarterback in the league by a long shot, but he's definitely been a really good quarterback this year. I wouldn't give it to Ryan Shazier just because of how egregious the injury was and just because he's on the football field. You have to actually earn it.
Alex Smith's playing like crap.
He's not playing like crap, but Ben Roethlisberger is playing very good football, way better than Alex Smith has in any of his actions so far.
I think it depends on how you define this award. Is it about who's the best player who's coming back, or is it about who's had the best comeback? And I think that the answer is clearly the latter would definitely be Alex Smith. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger came back from Tommy John surgery. I mean, that's yeah, it's work, but it's a normal injury that a lot of people have recovered from. Alex Smith's recovery to be able to play professional football and start and compete for a job for a team that's trying to win games at this point and earn that spot, I would say that is a more impressive comeback. And so while I don't disagree, Corey, that Ben's clearly been the better player, there's no doubt how this is going to go. I will bet the house on it that Alex Smith is going to win Comeback Player of the Year because the media and everybody involved, and rightfully so, I think, has gotten behind Alex Smith as this incredible story because it is. I mean, Ben's story is not incredible. I'm sorry, it's not. He's had a nice comeback.
I agree with everything you're saying. Alex Smith
what I'm saying is this is a story award more so than a performance award. That's just the way it is.
I guess we'll see. I mean, if that is the case, then I see what you're saying. I guess I haven't really seen that to be the case where we've ever had two comeback player candidates where one came from a more significant injury, the other had the better season, and one got it simply because their injury was more significant. I haven't seen that before. Now, I don't know if that's happened a whole lot before, so maybe there just isn't a precedent that has been set there, and maybe this would, officially set that precedent, so to speak.
But there's also no precedent for anybody ever playing again after having Alex Smith's injury. Right,
and I hear that, but to me, I don't think that it should, whether it is or not, I don't think it should be enough just to have the story. I think that you should have to have the performance too.
Well, but the story is driven by the performance based off of the injury. I mean, we're not talking about, just something that we're talking about as like, well, this is a great story. No, Alex Smith had to work a lot harder to get back to being able to play football than Ben did.
I would take exception to it if all he did was come in for one kneel down and got the award simply because he came back and he played one down of football.
Right, but he's not doing that. He's being a productive football player that may end up earning a relatively long-term starting gig. I mean, at this point, the team is considering bringing him back next year, probably fairly so, to be the starting quarterback next season. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad decision given how he's played, and I think he deserves a lot of credit for that. Also, if we're talking about performance, statistically and things like that, Ben's got a way better team. So that's got to be part of the consideration, right?
You can't penalize a player for the team that they're on.
Yeah, you can. People do it all the time. We're going to do it when we vote on MVP and we give it to Aaron Rodgers instead of Patrick Mahomes.
You think that's actually going to happen?
I think that we already did it as a podcast. Like, you and I agreed that Rodgers belonged ahead of Mahomes
for right now.
And he still does.
But that's not because he has a better team around. It's because he's been playing better.
He's been playing better, but his numbers aren't better. Therefore, his numbers aren't better because he doesn't have a better team.
Yeah,
that's what I'm just saying. Just saying.
Sean's last question. These have actually led to some pretty decent discussion this week. Is what are Baltimore's playoff chances, and will Lamar get his first playoff win if they do make it? I think we kind of have to start by going back to the same conversation we had in regards to the Patriots with Andrew's question. Right, the Ravens are a game ahead of the Patriots, but they are a game out of the wild card if the season were to end today. That makes things kind of complicated, and they've got, I don't have their schedule right in front of me. If one of you guys could pull that up, that would probably help our discussion. But
it's Browns, Jags, Giants, Bengals.
Browns, Jags, Giants, Bengals. Okay, so they've got 3 very winnable games there. between the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Bengals. Granted, the Giants have been playing better of late, but they still should not be able to beat the Ravens. But the Browns are 2 games ahead of the Ravens right now. Been playing pretty good football. Definitely have a chance to win this game this week. So it's tough to say what their chances are, because even if they were to go 3-1, that doesn't, that gets them to 10 wins. But 10 wins might not even guarantee a team a playoff spot in the AFC. We already said 9 wins, probably won't get you in. 10 wins might not. We could have legitimately 8 teams with 10 wins when all is said and done here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure if the Ravens control their own destiny at this point. Like, if they do win all 4 of these games, will there still be too many 11-win teams?
Yeah, I don't. Well, there could be, right? It's not necessarily will there be, but I think right now they don't have enough games against teams ahead of them, where they can change the setup by themselves. They would need help, because even if they beating the Browns, and the Browns are the only team ahead of them right now, only gets them to win
2 games ahead.
Right, it only gets them to win a game of the Browns. So they're going to need help in addition to going 4-0 if they even do go 4-0. So there's that side of the conversation to look at.
I think some of the teams ahead of the Ravens though play each other.
Well, yes, and that I'd have to take a look at to see if there's enough of that intermixing there. I don't know that there is necessarily, but it'd be interesting to take a look and see. Maybe we can jump on, if ESPN has their playoff calculator up and running yet. I can play around with that later today. The other part of the question was, if they do make it, will Lamar get his first playoff win? And the problem there is that if they do make it, they're probably going to be a low seed, and they're likely going to play, somebody like the Steelers or the Chiefs or the Bills in the first round. And those are all tough matchups to get your first career playoff win against. So there's certainly no guarantee that he will.
I mean, it's the NFL. There's no guarantees at all, really. I mean, except for the Jets going 0-16. You can get a stone tablet out and etch that on in there. But I mean, it is what it is. I think the Ravens have a decent chance. They seem to be trending upward. I don't know how you can get much worse than they had been playing against the Patriots and the Titans, and then having everybody get injured or have COVID against Pittsburgh. So. I think they have a decent chance I think they would have a decent chance against the Bills or whoever ends up winning the South, whether it be the Titans or the Colts. If they have to play the Steelers again, maybe that's the next best chance. And then if it's the Chiefs, then I'd be betting on the Chiefs in that game.
Yeah, I don't think obviously the Ravens are going to have to play a division winner on the road, because they're going to be a wild card team. The only division winner that I think I would really give them a really good chance of beating is the winner of the South, and we don't know who that's going to be. They already beat the Colts this year. They lost to the Titans in overtime, but that was a really competitive game. But if they have to match up against the Steelers again, I don't know. Those games are always so messy. They're probably not going to have to play the Chiefs, because I think you can write this down. The Chiefs are going to overtake the Steelers for the 1 seed, because I think the Steelers are going to lose at least 2 more games, and I'd be surprised if the Chiefs lost any the rest of the way. But if they have to play the Bills are playing really good football right now, and the Ravens, even after they've recovered some of their players from the COVID breakout, they've still got a lot of injuries that were permanent for this season that have affected their ability to run the football. And we talked about it last week, where the Bills are, getting back to their identity on defense, being a really good defensive team, as Josh Allen was sort of regressing to the mean. Well, Josh Allen went back to early season Josh Allen this week. So if that sticks around, the Bills are a threat to win the AFC, in my opinion. So, the Bills are certainly not going to be a team that the Ravens can hope to pick on potentially as a team to get a win, because the Bills right now are a significantly better team than the Ravens, as are, I believe, every other team that's winning their division It's just that the potential winner of the South might be the closest to the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's basically what I'm saying. And winning the Super Bowl is not easy, right? Like you're not just going to roll the ball out and just go win the championship. So you're not going to get to play the Bengals and
Cowboys.
The Cowboys in the playoffs, right? Like you don't play the Orioles in the baseball playoffs. You have to play legitimate competition. So no, it's not going to be easy, but I agree. I think they have the best chance against whoever wins the South, and then next the Bills, and then next the Steelers, and then put down your couple dollars on the Chiefs if they play the Ravens. So.
Part of me is hoping that Lamar can get a playoff win just so we can stop hearing about it. Like somehow he's a horrible quarterback because in year 3 he hasn't won a playoff game yet. Peyton Manning didn't win his first playoff game until, his 6th season in the NFL?
Yeah, it was his 5th or 6th.
Yeah, so, and Lamar's been starting, people forget this. He's only been starting for, at this point, 2 full seasons? Maybe a little longer than that? He came in halfway through the 2018 season and was a fish out of water. They basically had to play some type of college-style offense because they had no reason to anticipate that he could throw yet. So he's really only been a throwing quarterback for a year and a half. So and he's also age-wise very young.
He turns 24 in January.
Yeah, so we will make for the rest of their respective careers jokes about the fact that he's younger than Joe Burrow. So there's that. I think that people need to give Lamar time to grow as a player. He's already exceeded all expectations, in my opinion. This year's been very tough for him. Some of the weaknesses in his game have been exposed. His team hasn't helped him out due to injuries and other shenanigans that they've got. COVID has definitely been a big factor, but you still see the singular talent that he is that made him such a special player last year. And I expect him to continue to evolve as a quarterback. And honestly, I couldn't care less if he doesn't win a playoff game this year. As far as my personal evaluation, I wish other people could care. I know you care, but I'm not a Ravens fan, so
yeah. But as far as the personal valuation of Lamar Jackson as a player, it doesn't move the needle for
me. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the 2 playoff games, right? The first one, the Chargers were a better team than the Ravens that year. The Ravens only made the playoffs and only won the division and hosted that playoff game because the Steelers blew it. Right? The Steelers had a 5-game lead with 6 to play, and the tiebreaker, and they figured out how not to win.
Yep.
I have no idea how that happened. Well, they lost to the Raiders, is what happened, and tied the Browns. And then in 2019, the Ravens choked. I mean, there's no way around that.
Yeah.
Right? The Ravens were certainly better than the Titans, but the Titans were hot. But that shouldn't matter when you're the better team. You got to show up and defend your own field, and that did not happen. So, I mean, it wasn't like the Steelers game this year where Lamar's just turning the ball over left and right, and gets taken back to the house or almost. It was a collective failure, offense, defense, special teams, everybody, in that Titans game. Yeah. So, it's not like, oh, well, Lamar can't win the big one because I mean, that's lazy. That's crap.
So some pretty good mailbag questions from our listeners this week. If you'd like to send us mailbag questions in the future, you can send them to thesportsballers@gmail.com. You can also comment on the video, and we're doing these live streams like we are on Facebook right now. Let's go ahead and get on to our week.
Well, before we move on, I want to point out to any potential sponsors how wonderful a job Corey did in the transition to and from the mailbag. That's insert your ad here. Just want to say that.
Yeah, that was pretty nice. Yeah, That was pretty good.
I forget how I transitioned, honestly.
It was smooth. It was very smooth.
You were like, before we get to our mailbag, we want to thank our sponsor, blank. It was
Hey, yeah, no, I
great.
Yeah, if you want to be a sponsor for the show, we would gladly take some sponsors. So, reach out to us at thesportsballers@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Moving on to our Week 14 game picks. As always, we don't talk about every single game. The games that we're pretty we have similar thinking on, we tend not to talk about except for sometimes the prime time games. But you'll be able to catch all of our picks on the blog tomorrow afternoon. But let's start with tomorrow's Thursday night football game between the Patriots and the Rams. This will be played at SoFi Stadium in LA. And we're all on the Rams for this game, which I was actually a little bit surprised to see all of us with very similar confidence points. Considering I have seen some people who seem to think that the Patriots are the sexy pick this week. But I've got 7 on the Rams. Evan has 9 and Eric has 11. So I guess I'll start first, which is why I have just a little bit less confidence than Eric and Evan. And it sort of touches on Andrew's point that he made in his question that Eric raised a concern with, which was that the Patriots look like a team that could beat anybody. And while I agree with Eric's counterpoint that the better teams in the league, like the Chiefs, for example, would probably beat up on the Patriots, I do see enough from the Patriots that would suggest that they are a team that could beat anybody on any given Sunday. If you match them up against the Chiefs 100 times, I think that they'd win a few of those. I don't think the Chiefs would win every single one of those matchups.
If the Chiefs played the Jets 100 times, the Jets would win one.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that one. Maybe if a bunch of the Chiefs players get
NFL
injured.
Players on their team.
What's that?
The Jets have NFL players on their team too.
Oh, sure, but I think it would take a lot of injuries to the Chiefs to give the Jets any wins.
Well, 1 out of 100. Crazy stuff happens.
Regardless, the point that I'm really making is I'm trying not to be too swayed by the outcome of this past weekend because it was the Chargers, and the Chargers are not a good team, and their special teams unit is awful, and 143-0 drubbing does not automatically mean that now this is a juggernaut team. Right? What was that?
It was 45.
45-0. Jeez. Right? That doesn't suddenly make the Patriots a juggernaut. The issues that we have seen with them recently are still there. But they have that capacity. And the Rams are not a juggernaut team of their own. The Rams are not one of the really good teams in the NFL that I think would definitely beat the Patriots. I think the Patriots can potentially win this game. They showed they had absolutely no problem going across the country to SoFi Stadium last week and putting together a really good defensive game plan. I don't see why Bill Belichick isn't capable of doing the same thing this week.
The people I'm worried about going across the country is Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, to be honest. They were calling the Ravens game in Baltimore. They're calling this game in Los Angeles. And then I believe they have the Saints and the Eagles in Philly on Sunday.
Oh, jeez. It's a lot. It's a lot of traveling.
Yeah. So, it wouldn't surprise me if somebody's stepping in for them for one of those games. I mean, that sounds exhausting. In terms of the actual game itself, I agree with you, Corey. I think the Patriots could win this game. I'm a little nervous, to be honest, about putting so many points. I think the Rams are the better team on paper, but like the Belichick factor, he can. Like the Chargers should have beat them last week. I think. Like if the Chargers were a competent organization, they would have beaten the Patriots. Like the Patriots don't have any players over there. They just don't. How do you lose to them? Asking you, Ravens, for example. So like I just wonder, have the Rams exercised their demons from Super Bowl 53? Right? Like are they still shaking in their boots from that? Like the Falcons were the last time they played the Patriots. Because the Rams should win. They should, but they might not.
Yeah, I agree with both of you guys that the Patriots could win this game because of the Belichick factor. He schooled Sean McVay once. We saw that happen, like Evan mentioned, in Super Bowl 53, where it was a surprising coaching mismatch because of the respect that we have for Sean McVay as a young head coach. But it is what it was. It was a beatdown on the sidelines, and I would assume that that's not going to be the case because I think that 2018 Patriots team was a lot more talented than this team. They had Tom Brady, although he wasn't a huge factor in that win. They had much better defensive talents. They didn't have 8 guys not playing because of COVID. Some of their best players have either left the team in general or injured or opted out, like I said. So it's not quite the same units. And I also think that the Rams defense is a lot better, or at least playing a lot better right now. They have Jalen Ramsey. I don't believe he was on their team at that point. So that's a pretty big factor. He'll have no trouble locking down whatever bum the Patriots are running against him. So that's my big worry for the Patriots. Isn't so much. I think their defense. I think Belichick could come up with a good defensive plan. They could limit the Rams' attack, but I just have a really tough time seeing Cam Newton having a whole lot of success going up against that defensive front. That seems like a nightmare matchup to me.
What about Aaron Donald? Right?
Yeah.
Like the Patriots' offensive line is either injured or terrible or both. So, this Aaron Donald guy's pretty good.
Yeah. I think Aaron Donald is a good enough player. Certainly, I don't even think this is a controversial statement to handle Cam Newton as a runner. Like I think that's the only way the Patriots move the ball anymore. Cam completes like 6 passes a game now, and they're able to succeed because of the ground game. I don't see that happening against the Rams.
The Arizona Cardinals, coming off their loss to the Rams, are going to be out at MetLife Stadium to face the Giants this week. One of our listeners who's competing in the fan contest has already picked the Giants to win this game, but we are all on the Cardinals. That'd be James. He's got the Giants winning. But
we need to have him on this show to defend himself. Some of these picks.
We've all got the Cardinals, though. I've got 11 points on them. Eric's got 8. Evan's got 7.
I'm going to text him.
The Giants are playing better lately. Like, I'll give them credit for that. Their defense is playing pretty well. Colt McCoy looked fine this past weekend. Didn't look great, but he also didn't look bad. He managed the game. The big story there is just the defensive improvement that we've seen from the Giants. But is that going to be enough? I really don't think so. The Cardinals have way too much talent for the Giants defense to contain. And the Cardinals defense is more than capable of stopping the Giants. Keep in mind that the Seahawks don't exactly have a vaunted defense this year. You mean that was really what allowed the Giants to compete in that game, mixed possibly with a little bit of the Seahawks overlooking them, possibly.
Overlooking them to get to the Jets. This
maybe they're overlooking both of them. Maybe they're looking 3 weeks in advance. Maybe the Seahawks are looking 3 weeks down the road.
I mean, let's also point out the fact that the Seahawks have been trending down for weeks now. This wasn't like I mentioned it last week when we talked about that game. Was I had less confidence than you guys did on the Seahawks, and I specifically said it had nothing to do with the Giants. It had everything to do with the way the Seahawks were playing.
You did.
And while they didn't prove me right because I still picked them and put a good amount of confidence points in them, some of what I saw played out to that level, and that's a good reason to believe that the Giants looked pretty good against the Seahawks, but the Seahawks are making a lot of teams look good lately. Teams that aren't really that good.
Yeah.
I mean, like I've been saying, their defense makes opposing quarterbacks look like 2013 Peyton Manning. So, Colt McCoy, he's going to get a couple touchdowns.
The Cowboys are playing in Cincinnati. I've got 6 on the Cowboys. Evan's got 8. Eric's got 3.
Yeah, what are you guys doing? The Cowboys are awful.
This is a bit of a toilet bowl of a game.
I mean, okay, but here's the thing. The Bengals, since Joe Burrow got hurt, have played 2 games against who they played. They played the Giants and they played the Dolphins. They were more competitive in those games than the Cowboys have been against the team on Thanksgiving and against the Ravens yesterday. I mean, I'm not saying that makes them better than the Cowboys, but ever since they lost Joe Burrow, they've been surprisingly in games that they were supposed to get rolled in. So I'm not going to sit there and say the Cowboys are definitely going to beat this team. The Cowboys suck. They're terrible. I mean, I can't put high confidence in them at all. That is, like, if the Cowboys are the team that I have to pick because, just logic dictates it, they're going to be a low confidence pick every single time unless it's the Jets, and they don't play the Jets this year.
I still think the Cowboys are a lot better than the Bengals right now, even with those games. The Cowboys defense has their pass defense has gotten better of late. Their run defense is still atrocious. let's not get it twisted. The run defense is not there. Their pass defense has gotten better.
30 more yards.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Joe Mixon if he is healthy and is able to play. That could potentially swing things a little bit, but I also think the Bengals defense is bad enough that the Cowboys can take advantage of that.
I think I saw an alert about Joe Mixon. Bengals Joe Mixon foot is eligible to come off IR, but head coach Zach Taylor says his return will have to wait another week. He's out for Sunday versus Dallas.
Yeah, so
I mean, I don't think Joe Mixon really moves the needle all that much anyway, but
I do.
I mean, he's not that good of a running back, and running backs aren't that valuable. So
I disagree.
He hasn't done anything his entire career. He's just a guy.
That's not
true.
true.
Joe Mixon, I'm not feeling Joe Mixon.
He's just a guy.
He has some of the
for
best.
this game, I think both teams. I mean, goodness gracious,
they're both terrible.
Yeah, they're both awful. The Cowboys get more credit for being awful because they're the Cowboys. The Bengals have been frisky lately, but I think the Bengals are still more awful. Their defense is terrible, and the Cowboys' defense is terrible. I think the Bengals or the Cowboys' offense will execute better. Andy Dalton revenge game, maybe. A little bit of that in there.
Can we also comment real quick on Mike McCarthy raging on the sidelines yesterday for a situation that he could have prevented by himself, where the Cowboys were lining up for a 35-yard field goal, and they took a delay of game penalty, and he threw a temper tantrum over there, even though he had 3 timeouts, and he could have easily just done that, and they would have had a 35-yard field goal instead of a 40-yarder that Zerline missed. I mean, what is that about? Like, there's no woe is me when it's self-inflicted, and that's another reason why I don't trust the Cowboys, because their coach, for whatever coaching ability he may have had once, which was probably not that great in the first place, he has lost his marbles. Mike McCarthy is Freddie Kitchens this year.
I still take exception to you guys trash-talking Joe Mixon. This is not Jeremy Hill we're talking about. Joe Mixon had a 40-point fantasy game this season.
A fantasy game?
I don't give a crap about fantasy.
This is the reality.
Okay, but when you're scoring that many points, you're playing well. You don't score that many points if you don't play well.
Okay, but that's also one game in a 4-year career. Am I really supposed to?
But he's been injured most of this season. Like this year, he'd been playing really well this year.
He's not that good. When healthy, is he a top 10 running back in the league? Nah. And I'm not going to waste your time until you go through all 32 of them to figure it out.
He might be.
No way.
Yes, that's not true. We heard back from James asking him to defend his Giants pick over the Cardinals. He says the Cardinals have lost 4 out of their last 5, and that one win came on a Hail Mary. Arizona is traveling east and playing at 12 o'clock. He lives in the Central Time Zone. Plus, the Giants' defense is actually decent. I'm going to go ahead and disagree on the Giants' defense being actually decent.
I literally just talked about how the Giants' defense has been playing pretty well lately.
I don't see it. The
Giants' defense has been good lately. So I give James credit for a good defense. I still think he's wrong, but it's a good defense of that pick. Houston plays in Chicago, and Evan is lone wolfing this one. Eric and I have the Texans with 5 points. Evan is going Chi-Town with 1. So why the Bears?
Bears playing at home, outside. High temperature on Sunday is 32 degrees. And the Texans are a dome team. I think the Bears defense, there's a defense that's actually decent, despite their offense being a mess. I think Sean Watson holds onto the ball too long. The Khalil Mack and friends could get after him a little bit. And then dome team playing outside in Chicago. Um, although the Bears could blow it like they did against the Lions. My goodness. Um, although I correctly picked that, and I believe you guys did not. So, but yeah, I like the Bears outside. And Squeaker, Trubisky can do things.
See,
So,
it's weird. You're underrating all the defenses because the Bears rank 8th. That's better than decent, and the Giants rank 17th. That's at least decent. Like that's the literal definition of decent, right in the middle.
I've called it below average, but
It is technically below
It
average.
is technically below average. Good lord. Um, Christ. Yeah, I mean, I thought about this game a little bit, but I still think the Texans are the better team here, and I think the Bears are playing. They play better with Trubisky than they do with Nick Foles, but they're still not a good team. They've got a good running back. They've got a really good wide receiver in Allen Robinson.
your boy,
My
you're
boy.
in love with him.
They have a good defense, and yet this team cannot figure out how to win games. Like, the pieces are there other than the quarterback, and when the only thing that's missing is a quarterback and you still can't get it done, I'm not going to trust you to win a game. I mean, I get that the Texans are a dome team, but they've got a quarterback who can run the ball, who can throw the ball. Yeah, they lost Will Fuller, but they found some guy off the practice squad this week. I forget his name, who ended up having a really good fantasy day at least. And
Oh my goodness, more fantasy. This is the reality football portion of the show.
okay, but you have to produce to get fantasy points. That's how you score in fantasy football, by producing. He came off the practice squad and he had a rapport with Deshaun Watson. What more do you want?
I mean, I don't rely on fantasy for my, analysis.
I'm not relying on fantasy for my analysis, but I think I'd be a fool to not
Brought it up twice.
to not take that into consideration that's how I know about this guy, is because I was researching fantasy for my write up today.
But you can't remember his name. I don't know that I'll be trusting anybody off of a practice squad.
I'm not saying I trust him to repeat his performance. I'm certainly not saying I trust him to do that, but Deshaun Watson is able to figure out how to do things that other humans can't.
Because he's a one-man show.
And sometimes that one-man show is enough. And apparently the team with a quarterback and nothing else could be better than the team with
Everything
but the quarterback.
I think this really underscores how in the world did the Bears pick Trubisky over Mahomes and Deshaun Watson. I don't know that any Bears fans need reminding that they picked Trubisky.
I mean,
over
how
Deshaun
good
Watson.
was Mahomes supposed to be coming out of college?
That's true.
I mean, he was definitely seen as a little bit of a high risk pick, but
It's a bit of a project.
but when the Chiefs traded up to draft him, I got excited because I knew that he was in good hands with Andy Reid. But if you're a crappy team who has a history of not turning out quarterbacks like the Bears, I still believe that Mahomes would have been ruined if he had gotten drafted by the Bears and had to start as a rookie.
Especially, I mean, didn't they still have John Fox as their coach?
Yeah, he was.
2016?
John Fox basically treated Mitch Trubisky like he was Tim Tebow and just refused to let him throw the ball. Like, they started Mike Glennon at the beginning of the year, and they realized you can't keep doing that. And so then they threw Trubisky out there, and he threw like 6 passes a game.
Yeah.
I believe he also beat the Ravens.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah. Jets at Seahawks is notable only because we are all going max confidence on the Seahawks. Moving on to Colts at Raiders. Evan and I both have the Colts with 4. Eric's got the Colts with 9. Raiders should not have won their game against the Jets. I still don't think that they are an awful team. I think they've got enough talent to make this game interesting. But the Colts have a really good defense. Their offense has been playing pretty well lately. Jonathan Taylor is finally producing,
Doing something.
and they're doing a good job of rotating him and Naeem Hines in that offense. So I still think they're going to win. But Eric, why so confident that the Raiders have at least less of a shot than Evan and I seem to think?
Because the Raiders haven't resembled a good football team the last 2 weeks. I mean, they got housed by the Falcons. They found a way to lose to the Jets until the Jets said, "Here's a free win." I mean, they have not done anything lately to inspire confidence. The best thing they've done recently was when they barely lost to the Chiefs. They're on a 3-game losing streak in my mind at this point. I
Yeah.
mean, that's where they are. And the Colts have a really good defense. The Raiders' offense has been struggling lately. I mean, they struggled against the Falcons. I don't see that struggle changing against a really good defense. I think the Raiders' defense is pretty bad, which means the Colts are going to be able to move the ball on them. I just don't think it's a good matchup for them. I mean, the Colts are a way better team at this point.
I think the Raiders are a team that plays to the level of their competition, and they kind of overshot that in playing down to the level of the Falcons and the Jets by actually playing below their level. I think they overshot that, but we've also seen them beat the Chiefs and play a pretty close game against the Chiefs. I think that they have the capability of making this a close game, and when that's the case, I can't eliminate the possibility that they manage to pull out a victory.
I would like to see the Raiders play the Chargers. I think that would be an exciting game. Just for who's going to screw up harder on any given play. Like the Raiders, that loss to the Falcons was egregious. You can't come to Atlanta and get boat raced. I don't think there were any fans at that game, but if there were allowing a full stadium, it would have been full of Raiders fans. So to play as bad as they did is inexcusable. It becomes excusable when you look to the next week against the Jets to play as bad as they did against the Jets. That is also inexcusable, although Greg Williams excused it. And the third G stands for genius, apparently. I think it stands for gonna need a new job. So, I think the Colts, I don't know. I kind of trust the Colts, I guess. And the Raiders are just too up and down, and they seem to be on a bit of a down right now.
Got the Washington football team at the San Francisco 49ers in Glendale, Arizona, and Evan is going lone wolf, taking the team with 2 confidence points. Eric's got the Niners with 1. I've got the Niners with 2. Why are you taking the team, Evan?
Maybe the football team is trending up a little bit. And then the 49ers, I mean, the football team they have a really good defense. I think Chase Young is the defensive rookie of the year at this point. I don't really see any challengers.
I think he's probably locked
except
up
maybe Jeremy Chin, who keeps just getting scoop and scores got like 2 of them in a row against. Was that the Falcons or somebody else?
No, that was the Panthers Vikings game.
The Vikings, yes.
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins just whoops.
Yeah, but like that, that's to his credit, you have to put yourself in the right place at the right time. But I do think that Chase Young is kind of locking his status as the defensive rookie of the year up over the past couple weeks.
And I think Nick Mullins at quarterback is frazzleable, if you'll allow such a word. Like he sometimes, like when the pressure starts getting to him, he just starts looking around and his eyes are about to fall out of his head, and he just throws it somewhere. And that may be to a teammate, it might not. So it's I think Washington, another squeaker, but I think by a sort of similar score that they beat Pittsburgh 23-17, maybe like a 20-16 type of thing.
Washington just does not play well against San Francisco. I think we're 6-16 since the 70s ended against them. Like I thought about this game and I'm sitting here like I don't see the team beating those uniforms. I just don't see it. I can't
Well, I
picture it in
mean,
my
I didn't
mind.
know Joe Montana was their quarterback all of a sudden.
I
Maybe,
know that he's not, but it hasn't mattered who their quarterback has been. We just don't play well against San Francisco for whatever reason. And I couldn't picture in my mind, so I went with the 49ers. Because I thought about this one for a long time, because I think that it's a close matchup. They have the same record as each other. Like, they have the same record. But I just don't see the team pulling this one out.
Well, I'll remind you that in the 1983 NFC Championship game, the team beat Joe Montana's 49ers to advance to the Super Bowl. So
Yes.
there's
That
that.
was one of the
Stadium?
6 games they won. I said 6-16.
Okay, but I'm just saying that they won the ones that mattered. I think that was the only time they met in the playoffs, which is crazy given
Yeah,
how
considering
good the team,
considering the 49ers played the Cowboys countless times in the playoffs.
like they made an NFL film about it.
Yeah.
I mean, wasn't this specific game, wasn't this in, I guess, January of 1984?
Yeah.
Right? Like, this was so long ago, the Orioles were defending World Series champions,
Yes.
and the Colts were still in Baltimore.
Yes.
So, it's been a little while.
Yeah.
I don't know how that has anything to do with the game this week.
Nothing to do with it, which is why I'm not going to make my argument based off of any type of 40 years of history. But
Well, that's where my gut feel comes from.
fair enough. I fought with this game a little bit. I thought about going with the team, but I just think that despite the fact that the 49ers seem to have no players, they're still competitive. They beat the Rams twice. They crushed them the first time on Monday Night Football. They're a well-coached team. They find a way to create offense even with a bunch of guys that have no business creating a bunch of offense.
Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel are both good players, and they're both healthy.
Yep. So they got
And Mostert is healthy.
They got 2 receivers that are valuable. They've got some semblance of a running game back with Mostert being able to tote the rock. And Nick Mullins has been a surprisingly effective backup over the course of the last few years. Like,
Yep.
this isn't exactly news. We saw him do this back in 2018 when Jimmy Garoppolo went down with his torn ACL. He had them in games. He competed
he's
pretty
been
well.
fine.
And also the 49ers defense hasn't taken this massive drop off that we thought they would have when they had a ton of injuries. They're not, obviously not nearly as good as they were last year, but they don't suck. Like, they can get stops, and with the limitations that Washington has on offense, it's just tough to see them pulling this out, even if it's not a true road game.
Yeah, especially with Antonio Gibson doubtful with the turf toe. Granted, Antonio Gibson barely played against Pittsburgh, so how much does that
J.D.
matter?
McKissick tore it up.
Yeah, he did. I'll give him credit. He had a good game. He did.
Yeah.
Falcons at Chargers. For just the briefest time, I actually thought about taking the Chargers, and I was like, what am I thinking? And I'm going very much in the opposite direction. I've got the Falcons with 9 points, so not even particularly close. Eric's got the Falcons with 6, and Evan is going lone wolf. Chargers with 3. So, Evan, explain yourself.
The Chargers are a drug I can't quit. I don't
I think that's why I wanted to pick them, because of that exactly. And I realized, you know what? I need to quit.
The Chargers, they can't do anything right. There's no doubt in my mind they're better than the Falcons, but the Chargers can't do anything right. I'm thinking the Falcons will have maybe a 57-point lead with 10 minutes to play or something, and they'll figure out how to lose. Something like that is going to happen. I think the Falcons are going to out-choke the Chargers. And the Chargers will be, minding their P's and Q's this week. Just focusing on the details, because that's what got them boat raced against the Patriots last week. So Chargers in a red zone's about to cut off type of thriller.
Yeah.
I think that this is the game between two teams where you don't know what the hell they're going to do week to week, but you're pretty confident it's going to result in an L. but now they're playing each other, and
Exactly.
so it's like I don't know what to do. This is weird, but I think the Falcons are actually playing better football lately. That's not to say that they're good. But they competed with the Saints. Granted, it was the Taysom Hill Saints, and Taysom Hill was a big part of the reason why that game got close at the end because the dude is obsessed with fumbling.
But that's a
He
rivalry
had 3
game,
fumbles in the game.
Yeah, and it's also a rivalry game. Evan's right. The Falcons have historically given the Saints trouble when they had no business doing so, and vice versa. So that is a factor. So that's kind of why I went with the Falcons, though, is because I think that Raheem Morris has motivation to prove himself again because he kind of got shelved pretty early on after his stint with the Tampa Bay Bucks as the head coach. He kind of got cast aside. He wasn't even in the running for defensive coordinator jobs. He was getting like defensive back coach jobs and stuff like that with the team. And so it's been a decade plus since that head coaching opportunity, and now he's the interim guy. He's looking to potentially prove why he was given such an opportunity and perhaps prove people wrong for not giving him another chance. Whereas Anthony Lynn, I think he's a dead man walking. We're talking about him taking over the special teams for whatever this week, whenever the head coach is trying to figure out something new to do because of whatever's not working, it's over.
I mean, he's taking over the special teams. I mean,
that's where I saw it.
Seems like the head coach, you don't need to take over anything. You're already in charge.
You would think, but apparently not. So that's giving me no reason to be optimistic.
Well, I'm not optimistic
about the Chargers prospects. I stayed on the boat last week with them against the Patriots. I think I put 1 or 2 confidence points on them, and they proved me 100% wrong. They got their asses kicked for all 60 minutes of that game, and I don't see it changing because I don't see the Chargers being a particularly – I'm not going to say they're a low-character team, but historically they've been a team that gets down in the dumps and doesn't – they fall and they can't get up.
Yeah. The Steelers at the Bills will end Evan's string of 5 straight lone wolf games. I'm going lone wolf, taking the Steelers to win up in Buffalo with 1 confidence point. Eric's got 4 on the Bills, and Evan's got 6 on the Bills. And this was a tough one because the Bills are a good team. They've been playing really good football. The Steelers, if anything, have probably been trending just a little bit down lately. They certainly trended down against Washington, but I think that is the kind of a kick in the mouth that a good team bounces back from. I don't think we're going to see the same drop issues from the receivers this weekend. I think that all of the criticizing that Mike Tomlin has done over the past few weeks of his team has probably fallen on deaf ears among his players because they've been winning. That sometimes happens, even with good players. You start to think that you've kind of got it figured out. You don't
smelling yourself.
Yeah, you don't lose a whole bunch of games. You start thinking we can't lose. I
barely squeak by
to draw a bit of a
McSorley.
Yeah, I mean, to draw a bit of a comparison, I think it's one of the reasons why we got caught with our pants down with the coronavirus pandemic here in the United States, because we all thought the Ebola was going to be this huge, awful thing. We only ended up having 4 cases and 1 death from it, and we think, oh, well, the next time that somebody talks about this horrible outbreak, it's probably going to be nothing. And turns out that wasn't the case.
We got caught streaking through a 100,000 seat stadium. Caught with our pants down. Caught with our pants over there.
So, I would hope that, the next time that there is some awful health crisis that we're going to learn from this mistake and do better. And I think the Steelers can do that with this game. It comes against a tough opponent, but I think that's the kind of opponent you really want to have the week after getting shellacked. They didn't get blown out or anything, but it certainly feels like a shellacking when it's against the team with no name.
You lose to a team with no name and to a quarterback with 1 good leg. at home.
He actually didn't have any good legs because his the non-injury leg was bleeding profusely during the game because one of his linemen backed into him and cleated him.
Got spiked, yeah.
He actually didn't have any good legs. Wow.
Yeah. All the more reason why he's the comeback player of the year. So I don't necessarily agree with the idea that this game was a wake-up call. I just think that the Steelers are in a bad place offensively, and it caught up to them. I mean,
Well, to be fair, James Conner has been activated off the COVID list, so he'll be back. And I do think that makes a difference over Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland.
I mean, I kind of have the same feelings about him as I do Joe Mixon. He's just not
Joe Mixon is definitely a better running back than James Conner.
Yeah,
but James Conner is way better than Benny Snell as a lead back. Benny Snell is fine change of pace. He's perfectly adequate change of pace. He cannot be the lead back, and I take issue with the way that they've used Anthony McFarland. I'm definitely not going to trash talk Anthony McFarland, A, because he's a DeMatha guy, and B, because he is a good player, but they've misused him.
Yeah, I don't doubt that that's true, but I mean, a running game is a product of the offensive line and the scheme more so than the player, unless that player is like Barry Sanders. Like it takes a singular talent to overcome a bad blocking scheme and things like that. And I don't think that James Conner's that guy. So I don't see him making the Steelers' run game serviceable when it's been horrible. It's a marginal improvement at best, especially against a good defense like the Bills. I just think the Steelers aren't. Maybe they're just not as good as we thought they were. I think that's fine to say. I mean, we got a little ahead of ourselves. Well, I didn't, but some people did, claiming that the Steelers were just, oh my God, they're going to go undefeated. I'm like, probably not, because they're not that good. Nobody goes undefeated, and they're certainly not good enough to do so. They're going to slip up eventually, and they're going to lose to a team that they probably shouldn't, and then they might lose a couple of games to teams where you're like, okay, that makes sense. And this is a game that totally makes sense for them to lose on the road against a really good team that's playing better football than them at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with Eric. Also, I mean, the Steelers' record got a little inflated. They did.
Yeah.
I mean, they did play Dallas and the Giants in week 1, and they played Denver.
Well, they got to play the NFC East, which is
Jacksonville.
And they also got to play the Ravens when the Ravens were completely hampered by the coronavirus. So
yeah, the Ravens B team was out there, like, signing people off the street day of the game.
Yeah, RG3 starting. I mean,
yeah, and then he got hurt.
Chase McSorley had to come in
right there. So Trace McSorley, who hadn't taken a snap in a game since the preseason in 2019. I didn't even know he dressed for games ever.
My Penn State people were really excited for Trace McSorley, and I kind of looked at him like, y'all are kidding, right? Like, that guy can't play.
No.
Like, you really think that guy's not the future? That's like when people were gassing up Christian Hackenberg.
Christian Hackenberg. I think the first syllable of his last name is
appropriate.
Sums up his NFL career. Apparently, there's a Trace McSorley song, which I learned about the other day.
Goodness. We don't have time for that on the show. But we do have time to get to our Monday night football game between the Ravens and the Browns. We all have pretty similar confidence, but it's a primetime game. It features Evan's team, so of course we're going to talk about it to close out the show. I've got the Ravens with 3. Eric's got the Ravens with 4. Evan's got the Ravens with 5. Let's talk about that game, Evan.
I put more confidence because I'm in last place, and little extra purple Kool-Aid as well. There's certainly a chance the Browns win. The Browns have been playing really good lately. They beat Tennessee, who's been, not just a thorn in the side of the Ravens, but like a poisoned arrow in the side of the Ravens at this point. So they've rolled Tennessee as well. But that game was over. Tennessee made it almost interesting in garbage time. But yeah, I'm concerned about this game. In Cleveland, prime time. I think I'm picking with my heart instead of my head, frankly. That I just hope we win.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked what I saw from the Ravens' run game this past weekend or yesterday. And
Against Dallas.
Cle- yeah, but Cleveland's run defense is not great. They have a negative DVOA, which is a good thing, but they rank 19th in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not particularly good against the run compared to other teams. Um, so I still think that the Ravens can run over them. You're right, they're not Dallas. Dallas, I think, ranks dead last in the league in defensive rush. I guess OVOA technically, um, but I still think that the Ravens can run through Cleveland. I think that if Lamar can get a good week of practice in throwing the ball, I mean, keep in mind he didn't really get much of any practice time last week. Barely any practice time over the past few weeks because he had COVID.
The Ravens haven't had practice at all.
Right. So I think that a good week of practice for him can hopefully at least mitigate some of the mechanical issues that we've been seeing from him, especially in the past, especially in yesterday's game. Um, and it's a division game, so things get weird. I wasn't willing to put a lot of points on them, but I really do think that the Ravens win this game.
I think it comes down to Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams against Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Like, if the Ravens can stop the run, then they'll be
Kareem
able
Hunt
to
hasn't been
run
as
the ball
effective over the
themselves.
past few weeks. Like, I don't know what's been going on because early in the season and all last year, when both of them were active, Kareem Hunt was still eating. Like he was making big plays while Chubb was handling a lot of the dirty work and also making some big plays of his own. Over the past few weeks, since Chubb has come back from his injury, Kareem Hunt's production has steadily declined from one week to the next. He's still not a scrub, but like this past week, he didn't look that good.
Yeah, so Corey mentioned the fact that Cleveland's rush DVOA is negative, which is actually positive for defenses. But the thing is, when they're calculating a team's rushing DVOA, they're comparing those plays and their success rate to all plays, including pass plays.
Right.
And since rush plays are inherently less productive than pass plays, there's going to be the average DVOA, like defense against, is going to be negative for running because running plays on average are not as good as pass plays. So having a negative rush DVOA isn't indicative of anything. It really, your ranking is what matters the most.
Oh, right. There's only 7 teams in the NFL with a positive rushing OVOA for their defense. So it doesn't work the same way. Likewise, I think there's only like 10 offenses in the NFL who have a negative passing OVOA for their defense.
Right. Like that makes sense given the fact that it's comparing all plays and not just pass versus rush.
Right. And that's why I brought up specifically the ranking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Saying that they're 19th, which is the right thing to do there. So this game just feels like it feels like the Ravens have to win it. The Browns kind of got the win that they really needed against the Titans because that was the last big game on their schedule against a wild card competitor that they could have tiebreak issues with. Between then they've already beaten the Colts, they beat the Titans last week. Now they're 9-3, and they've got a pretty easy schedule outside of their games against the Steelers and the Ravens. They've got 2 games on there that they should win and get to 11-5. So they're in pretty good shape, whereas Baltimore is not. Baltimore can't afford to lose any games, I don't think. So, and then that includes this one. So I think there's more urgency for the Ravens to win this game. Historically, the Browns have not had any success against Baltimore. I don't see that changing this week. I think that the Ravens, while not quite the same team that they were earlier in the season or what we saw at the end of last year, I still think that they've got Cleveland's number a bit. I think that they've got the right recipe to make this game tough for the Browns. The only reason why I have limited confidence on the Ravens, frankly, is because Baker Mayfield has emerged as a pretty good quarterback the last few weeks. And if he's able to sustain that, the Browns should compete in this game. Whereas in prior matchups, we've seen him, both against the Ravens and the Steelers, get overwhelmed and play too fast and get happy feet and just play like crap. And that has instantly taken the Browns out of the game. I expect him to play competitively at the very least. He's not going to be perfect. He might make some mistakes, but it's not just going to be the game's over in the first quarter because Baker fumbled the ball and then threw a disgusting pick. And do we want to mention Ewing theory? Ewing theory again? With
Odell not being there?
Not being there, because I'm not going to do it yet because it's only been a few good games so far, but I'm keeping it in mind.
Another good quarterback, good player who was on your fantasy bench this week, Baker Mayfield.
I mean, again, what am I supposed to do?
I believe you might have lost this week, Eric.
Oh, I did. But I beat you earlier this season, even though my team stinks.
Yeah, I wrote in today's recap for the league, if Eric had started either Baker Mayfield or Corey Davis for anybody in his lineup except for Aaron Jones, he wins that game.
What am I supposed to care? I mean, my season's been over for a month.
Yeah, but you could have avoided your worst record in league history. Said you've clinched your most losses in a season.
I mean, Steven was going to beat my ass this week anyway, so I was already going to hit that milestone anyway. So it is what it is. The second,
I clinched a playoff spot in our league. I'm so happy about that.
That's
tired of not being in the playoffs. It's so hard to make the playoffs in this league because there's all good players, right? There's no, that guy doesn't know what he's doing. So that's an easy.
There have been in the past.
Well, Drew. Calling you out, Drew.
Yeah, Drew the last 2 or 3 years, like he had a couple really good years, and then he got lazy in his preparation.
Well, Drew's biggest fatal mistake was the fact that he kept Le'Veon Bell the year that he sat out, and then he kept him again.
Kept him again.
After he went to the Jets.
He was a first-round pick both of those. He was a first-round keeper both of those years.
Heading into the 2019 draft, Drew could have kept George Kittle as a 9th-round pick, and instead he kept Le'Veon Bell as a first-rounder.
And he could have done that and taken Le'Veon Bell in the first round if he really wanted him that badly.
He hadn't played football in 2 years, and he was going to the damn Jets. What are you doing? I told him not to do it, and he didn't listen. So.
Well, because he doesn't trust anything you say ever since you fleeced him.
That trade. Himself.
A trade that he offered you, by the way.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I don't trust you either, Eric. Like, I feel like, you're a bit of a trade predator in that regard.
Meanwhile, I just accept any trade anybody offers me, even when it's not to my advantage for some reason.
You make offers that aren't to your advantage. Like when you said, hey, here's Ben Roethlisberger for Golden Tate. I was like, okay, sure. I haven't really owned people in trades that much, except for that one trade with Drew. I mean, that's it.
Yeah.
And I guess Corey, too, in preseason with David Johnson. Now, you can't offer. That was you.
I got nervous because there was some talk that he might not be the guy in Arizona that year.
He was the guy.
And I was just like, you know what? I better go ahead and just do this while I can still get something for him because I'm so upset. He had such a good year that year. Took you to a championship.
So are you telling me, Evan, that I'm like the Danny Ainge of this league where it's just like I win all my trades and therefore I shouldn't be traded with?
I mean, I am just a risk-averse person, so
That's
I try not to.
I should stop trading because I've actually had really good drafts the last few years, and I trade the good players that I draft.
Well, you seem to be like the Mariners, right? Like, let's take this guy who sucks, and I'll send you in return all these stud players, right? These all-stars in exchange for a guy who only pitched for 2 seasons. And everybody hated and was out of the league.
It's been rough. I've had a really unlucky year this year, and I've traded some good players, but I find myself in a win-and-in situation this week, so we'll see what happens.
I was thinking about this. Your bad luck has kind of been maybe canceled by the fact that your division sucks.
Well, yeah. I mean, and not to mention, Will also has like -2 luck, and Andrew has -2 luck.
I mean, but Drew's -2 luck.
Well,
means
yeah, I
that
mean his doesn't really matter because that only means that he would have won 3 games.
Yeah.
But I mean, like Will's -2 would mean that I'm 1 game ahead of him, and if he beats me this week, I think he would end up with like the division. I don't know. I'd have to take a look and see like how that would work out. But regardless, we'll see how things turn out this week.
This is all very interesting for the listeners.
Yeah, so it is for our listeners who are not in our league and don't care
I'm sure
about our competition. They care about their own. That does it for all of our game picks. It does it for all of our topics. Follow us on Twitter at Sportsballers18. I'm at Corey Puffett. Eric is at Quagmire67. Evan is at Evan_Ash13. If you haven't already done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button on whichever podcast service you're listening on. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Amazon Podcasts. If you're listening to us live right now on Facebook, hit that like button on our Facebook page to be notified anytime that we go live. And email us, thesportsballers@gmail.com, with game picks, with mailbag questions. Eric has got his hand raised like one of my students in class.
Yes, sir. So I just wanted to get a quick shout out in. Shout out to Mina Kimes. We didn't mention this last week, but Mina Kimes was the phone friend for somebody on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah, she was.
Because they were going for the millionaire question, and she helped him get it right. So shout out to her. That's pretty amazing. If somebody,
it was a politics question. It was about like old presidents from years past. It didn't even have to do with sports. She's a smart cookie.
Which president was the first to have electricity in the White House?
Yep.
If any of my friends are on Millionaire, don't call me for the $1 million question because I won't be able to help.
Yeah, you can call me for like the $5,000 question.
Actually,
I'm not putting myself out there much beyond that.
Yeah.
Remember when we played Trivia Crack? Remember that app?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then Andrew figured out how to cheat, and then the rest of us figured out how to cheat.
Yeah. You just Google the
and then it wasn't fun anymore. We stopped playing. Well, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Googling. It was like you could answer it, and then like if you got it wrong, you could just like close the app completely and go back in, and like it would have like undone your answer.
Now, Trivia Crack might have debugged that eventually.
Maybe, but by that time it was kind of ruined. We stopped playing.
Yeah. Plus, I waxed you all the time, Corey.
You did. I got a little annoyed by that. Like, I know you're a smart guy, but I'm smart too. I should be able to win some of these games.
I'm smart too.
Any other shout-outs?
I'm good.
I'll probably think of one as soon as we get done recording.
That's how it goes.
I'm hungry right now, so.
Well, that's going to do it for our show. We went a little bit longer this week than last week, but we appreciate any of you who stuck with us, whether it's on Facebook or on whatever podcast listening site that you use to catch our show each week. We appreciate your support. Leave a like, a comment, a review, a rating, whatever you have on your site. We appreciate those. Appreciate hearing from anybody who listens to our show. For Evan and for Eric, this has been episode 121 of the Sports Ballers podcast. I'm Corey Puffett. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will talk with you guys all again next week.